Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown, year number 25. Believe it or not, we've been talking sports every Sunday night. We're going to do it again tonight, and yes, we have a lot to get into, including the Pirate situation. Derek Shelton gets a photo conference from the GM. I guess that's fine. While the Reds hire a guy a lot of Pirate fans would have loved to have seen in Pittsburgh. We'll also talk about Pitt, Penn State. They're maybe on a collision course for all we know, but the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Steelers, the AFC North in general. Here to talk about it, we have a two-man crew tonight. My colleague here at KDKA, Rich Walsh, on the left, and to the right is Chris Mueller, PM Team 93.7, The Fan. All right, listen, first of all, slow starts. Mike Tomlin's been talking about slow starts for a long time. Can't have them, but last week he called it insignificant because they won, came back in that game and they actually made it a game. But it is significant when you fall behind. This would classify Rich as another slow start to me. They're down 6-3 at halftime. I know they have the lead now. But at home, you got to do more than that, don't you, to try to, get out of death situation in halftime into the third quarter.
But this is the way Mike Tomlin likes to play. I mean, he wants a slow start. Even though he says you got to get out of being a slow start. He said it at halftime with that interview with Melissa Stark. I just don't understand it. We know the Steelers are so predictable early on, and they want to keep this game close. That's why the second half stats are so much better than the first half stats, especially last week when they were down 17. But they are predictable in my mind. They're going to run on first down. They're going to try to get third and short yardage, and that's what they did today. And then if they have a penalty, pre-snap penalty, then all of a sudden you're third and long, and that's why your offense stalls.
I don't think he wants to play like this, but he's comfortable playing like this. And what frustrates me about the slow starts is he likes to play with a lead. Well, you don't get many leads when you start as sloppy and as slow as they do. He wants to deflate the football, not the Indianapolis Colts style. He just wants to take the air out of the ball. He wants to play the game a certain way, and that is directly in contrast to starting slow. You get up 10-0 on somebody, guess what? You're going to be able to do your ground and pound routine and make it like it's 1994 and Bill Cowher's still here, not losing a 10-point lead at any point in his career.
But
so
quite frankly,
that's what's frustrating, though.
They were lucky to be down where they were. There were 2 red zone turnovers, and I thought bad turnover. The first one was a good play by Herbeck and Watt, but after that, Rich.
That was a good play by Dante Jackson, too, right there. It was a bad throw. He rushed it a little bit.
No, come on. If you or I were transported into Jackson's cleats there, we're catching that ball, and we might actually make it further up the sideline.
$60 million quarterback didn't look like that to me in the first half.
No, I don't think he's a $60 million quarterback, but that's another topic of conversation at some other point, Bob. But I think they were 2 good plays. Dallas rushed that snap a little bit, and I think that caught a little confusion right there.
Steelers caught a break there, too, because I think T.J. Watt timed it up perfectly. But, man, to the naked eye, it looked like a bang-bang play. And I think what they benefited from was the fact that Dallas was rushing to the line. And I think even officials get caught up in the wash there, and there's a little confusion. And they lucked out there, frankly.
I want to go back to what you were saying about ground and pound. They can't ground and pound it. They don't have the team, especially because they don't have the 1-2 punch right now with Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. And I don't know if Najee Harris is the #1 guy. Why isn't he out there in critical moments?
He's not a #1 guy, though. He's not like a true feature back.
I think they like that split thing, even if
you're going to split with Champlin.
Would you guys agree that they're best?
I think that's what Tomlin.
Who do you guys feel the best about if all of their running backs are healthy? I know my answer. It's
Cordero Patterson,
the 33-year-old kick returner.
Yeah,
I still like, if healthy, I think Jaylen Warren.
But you need another guy with Jaylen Warren, I think.
Well, whatever. I think he's still, when healthy, totally healthy, I'll take
Harris
him.
has had a couple good runs so far in this game, but again, it's never what you want from him. It's never what you think his draft position suggests he should be.
And you watch Derrick Henry, who's that guy can turn it on, and he turns into a home run hitter. Now, we saw him on display. I want to talk a little bit about that game today. Man, it was AFC North, not the way you expect to see it. A lot of scoring, which begs this question, Rich. If the Steelers get into one of those games, do they have the kind of offense that can actually compete with Cincinnati or Baltimore on offense that way?
Maybe Baltimore, because they don't get into games with Baltimore like that. But absolutely not. No, I don't think they do. I don't know about you. They don't have the quarterback that can do it. And they don't have a running back, and they don't have receivers. They don't have a type of high-flying offense that you would want. Pitt has a better chance of being in games like that than the Steelers.
No, and I don't think the Steelers mentally want to be in that game. Tomlin, again, personality-wise, that's not them.
But you may have to at some point.
You may have to. I agree with that. And, the thing about Burrow is, obviously, that game was hugely entertaining. The Bengals gave that away. True Bengals fashion. They shouldn't have lost that game. They were 38-28.
Right.
But my point about that particular game is this. Burrow goes in there knowing he can beat the Ravens because he's done it before, right? Like, we've seen that guy light them up. And then Jackson, they're humming right now. I mean, they're in a very good place with their offense. The Steelers are the third best team in this division, I think, right now. They might be 4-1 when the night's over, but I would not pick them on a neutral field to beat either of those teams.
Yeah, I don't think they're a good matchup for the Bengals
I want to talk about the Browns, because the Browns is the Browns. But the Browns did something today that, you know, at the end of – they just had a blocked field goal, by the way, the Steelers. At the end of the game, well, it wasn't at the end. It was 24-3, and they're at the goal line. They have 12 guys on the field. Deshaun Watson's body language bothered me. What he did, it looked like he just walked off the field. I wonder if it's time. The problem they have in Cleveland, Chris, is that they have Jimmy Haslam, who wanted that quarterback and gave up everything to get him, and you have a head coach who didn't. And to justify what's going on, they have to keep playing him. But to me, they shouldn't. He's earned a spot on the bench regardless of what his contract is.
The best owner in the NFL is a unicorn, in my opinion, and it's a guy who has the money, obviously, to own a team and treats it like a fun thing, right? But then hires people and lets them do their jobs and has no ego in the process. Hey, like if you're the Niners ownership group, if you're them and you see that Brock Purdy's actually better than Trey Lance, who you spent the third pick on, you let Brock Purdy cook, right? In Kansas City, obviously, they let them kind of do things their way. Jimmy Haslam spent $230 million on this guy, and he is not going to let him be put on the bench. Stefanski already said it today. He was asked point blank, are you going to consider a quarterback change? He said no. That's the owner talking there. They are a much more dangerous team if Jameis Winston, who is his own worst enemy at times, is playing quarterback.
They would have been better with Joe Flacco as a quarterback.
Of course they would have. I mean, Jameis makes them. Their defense has struggled this year because the offense put so much pressure on them. You put Jameis in there who could throw 30 picks but 35 touchdowns in a season, you are inherently a more dangerous team, I think. But Haslam's not going to let it happen because that would be admitting that he turned this whole thing into a disgrace.
And if you're Stefanski, you can't tie yourself to Watson. You're going to end up getting fired, too, because you're tying yourself to this quarterback. Going back to your point about the 49ers, they gave up a few first-round picks, just let them go to go with a seventh-rounder.
I don't think he's tying
himself,
They got to do
something like that.
I think he's committed because he knows the owner wants it, and he's not going to have any. So that leads to, Stefanski shouldn't get fired, quite frankly, because that's not his doing. He wanted Baker Mayfield. I've seen enough reporting on that, but they did what they had to do.
Baker was his own worst enemy there, too. It's ended up pretty good for him in Tampa. He should not have played hurt. Then they should not have gone out flirting with Deshaun Watson. It was a comedy of errors from a franchise that specializes in that.
We got to take a break here, gentlemen. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Pirates, speaking of that, comedy of things. What are they going to do, and what have they done? They've done some things with the front office that indicates they're not going to change many things. We'll get into that and more as we continue on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. All right, we're talking about the Pirates, who came out this week. Ben Cherington, the GM, said that Derek Shelton will return. At least that's what he says. That's kind of a quick review based on how they normally do business, but I guess he's got Bob nutting on his side. But this is 5 years, Rich Walsh, of this kind of stuff. They've had 4 last-place finishes and 1 next-to-last-place finish. Doesn't seem to be a lot of progress, although there's some starting pitchers now they can build around. The question is, will they do it? Will they actually go out and spend money and do it? Because they have no other choice here.
What makes you think they're going to do it? I can't believe they're running it back with this group of guys again. I just don't understand. I feel like this was a bigger disappointment than last year. I was at that press conference and asked Ben Cherington multiple questions. They're not transparent with what they do. They give you a bunch of rhetoric, and they talk in circles. If it's me, I like Derek Shelton, but you make a change here. You bring a guy in that you need a winning type atmosphere in that locker room. They don't have it. They don't have winners in that locker room at the major league level. I understand Andrew McCutchen is a winner, but he's not like a locker room guy. You need a A.J. Burnett. You need a Russell Martin type guy to bring in there, but you also need a manager that these players aren't tuning out. And I think, Chris, that they might be tuning Derek Shelton out at this point.
Look,
I mean, I would have been on the phone with Terry Francona, and he goes to the Reds. I don't understand that at all.
Well, Richie, first off, next time you're going to go and cover a Cherington presser, let me know. I will supply you with croutons, bacon bits, and dressing so that you can eat the word salad with some toppings on it, because that's all he gives you. He answered a question just about why fans should expect anything better with, nonsense. You talk about rhetoric. It's just talking in circles and hoping somebody hears the word, we know we need to improve, or like a phrase like that, and that means something. Bob, you said it. They go through this process of apparently reviewing Derek Shelton and rubber stamping him. The way Ben Cherington described that process was very disconcerting if you're a Pirates fan, because it suggests a couple of things. Content with mediocrity as an organization, And that Bob Nutting, I just said, like in football, a good owner stays out of the way. In baseball, sometimes you need a little George Steinbrenner, like, hey, guys, what the heck is going on here?
Especially after he said what he said in the
right, and there's all this urgency to win, and those two looked like they were at loggerheads and frustrated, and then Ben just goes, oh, yeah, I recommended to Bob that
he has a few targets to hit.
Well, no, he
That's
said,
what
I recommended to Bob we keep Derek Shelton, and Bob was right on board. That makes me think that there wasn't even a conversation. He just said, I think we should keep this guy, and Bob said, sounds good. To your point, like, why do you think it'll be different? I don't. And why would Bob Nutting, who just authorized, what, $36 million or so, $38 million in offseason spending, that's essentially what they outlaid, just to get them up into the mid-80s. I'm not saying this was like a charitable endeavor here by him or a big dive into spending. Why, if he saw what Ben Cherington did with the money he did allocate to him, would he then allocate more this offseason? He'd say, wait a minute, you got me Rowdy Tellez.
It's about who you spend it on.
Well, that's what
I'm talking about.
That's what I'm saying.
He needs to make big splashes, not these nickel and dime
Sure, but why would Bob Nutting want to authorize more money to him to try to make those big splashes? He'd say, I gave you 35 or whatever million it was. You got Martin Perez, who pitched better for the team we traded him to. You got Gonzalez. You got Chapman. You got Rowdy Tellez. You got a bunch of guys who did very little productive work for this team. Why would the owner trust the general manager?
He's doing the fans a disservice. You have to have some pride as an owner, right? You want to win. I understand there's profits here, but at some point you got to win. 28 out of 32 losing seasons. Name me another professional sports team that has lost more than that.
Before you believe it, you have to see it, and you're not going to see it because you won't do it. And that leads us to you brought up Terry Francona. So first of all, let's just assume for a second that Terry Francona, who left on bad terms with Ben Cherington, didn't. Let's assume he didn't. What it would take for Terry Francona to come, you would think it would be easy sell, Rich, right? Because he's from this area.
He's from here.
But at the same time, it would also take overspending, I think, on behalf of Bob Nutting, because they're going to have to do something to make him believe that they have a legit, and some assurances. I don't think it ever would have come to.
The Reds are a more attractive scenario. Their best position player is 4 years younger almost than O'Neal Cruz. I mean, Elly De La Cruz is an actual potential superstar because of his age and his relative performance level. To go back to the rubber stamping by the owner of Derek Shelton coming back, that just suggests that it never even became like a question, Bob. Like, there was never even a discussion about it. And maybe it's because of, they don't have a great relationship, Cherington and Francona, but still, you're not even going to consider going down that path. And then, like, I could get on my soapbox here because Richie infects all of us with Bucko fever. But you're talking about a Reds team that just hired one of the more well-regarded managers probably the last 20 years. He's done it in a big market. He's done it with Cleveland in a small market, like created big winners and really good clubhouse culture. And that's a team that had one more win, finished ahead of you, and they blew out the manager there because they decided not even close to good enough. Exactly. That goes back to you accept mediocrity. This was a 76-win team last year, a 76-win team this year, and this year's team was considerably worse because they had the best pitcher in baseball for 23 starts. And they had O'Neal Cruz for the whole season.
And Jared Jones, who they had.
They had multiple things they didn't have last year. And they were only as good in the win column? Come on.
I don't know
what are we doing here?
And I didn't hear it, but it has to be a money thing. You'd have to eat Derek Shelton's contract, and I don't know how much it is. You'd also have to pay. I understand that, but you're not going to want to do it again, right?
Well,
you couldn't even pay Rowdy Tellez to stick around or give IKF his bonus?
I'll say this. They did pay 8 figures to get Huntington and Hurdle out of here. That was an 8-figure payout combined.
And that's why they're not going to do it again.
Shelton's payout is probably $1.5 million. I think he's a prime candidate to get blown out of there if they're 10-20 through 30 games next year or something, or even like 14-16 and they're just languishing. That begs the question, if I think it's possible he might get fired 35 games in, why not do it now? Why not just start fresh now? For the record, though, I'm an extremist on this. I don't think Ben Cherington should be back. What has he done to deserve another shot at this?
See, to me, I'd rather have him out, not Shelton. I'd rather give the manager something
The GM has absolutely more agency in how a team performs.
Absolutely.
You brought up culture. One of the questions I did ask him, I think there needs to be a change of culture, but one of the things that I did ask him was talking about, hey, can you attract any free agents here? What's going to make you attract free agents? And they talk a little bit about starting pitching, but when you don't give guys bonuses, why does anyone want to come here, especially losing 28 times out of 32 years?
Longer-term question is, Paul Skeens is watching all of this, and I wonder what he thinks. We got to take a break. When we come back, Pitt and Penn State both ranked. Penn State cracks the top 5. Penn State the top 25. We'll do it all when we come back right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. All right, interesting stuff here. Pitt and Penn State. Who knows? They may get together. 12 teams in a playoff. I mean, if you want to dream a little bit, you can. Still a lot of football left. Pitt, though, is 5-0. Penn State undefeated. Penn State's 4. Pitt is 22. Rich, I want to start with you on this. Are you believing what you see from this team? They got Cal coming out. Cal's got to just be miserable after blowing that game last night, 39-38. However, they're still a pretty good opponent. What do you think lies ahead for Pitt?
Cal and SMU scare me. Those are the 2 games I'm worried about. I like Pitt. I'm buying into Pitt.
Those are those classic ACC rivals can always trip you up. Cal and SMU.
I am buying Pitt because the offense is something we've never seen here, and I think it's exciting. It's putting fans into the seats, and that's something they need to do. If you're Pitt, you can't try to play 9-6 games like the Steelers do. You can't do it. It doesn't work. For a team like the Panthers. So I like what they're doing. I really like Eli Holstein. Hopefully they can keep this guy around for a little while.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Exactly.
That's more money.
It is. But, I mean, I think his NIL deal, from what I heard, is contingent on maybe playing there more than 1 year. But who knows? The guy that I'm worried about staying is Cade Bell. Because if someone throws a lot of money at him, a big school, he might go.
No question.
You know, I look back, and what a weird theme of Narduzzi's tenure. His best teams, and this appears to be possibly his best one so far in terms of just wins and losses, all defined by great quarterback play or very good quarterback play and great offense. And you know that drives Pat crazy, that he can't get a defensive team out there that can just stop people. I think teams are still going to just run underneath and run little crosser routes against him from now till the end of time. I will quickly say this, though. The reason I am enthusiastic about them, there's, Richie, you bring up Cal and SMU. Those are classic Pitt trap games, but they've surmounted those. It is an offensive sport. Vanderbilt beats the #1 team in the country by scoring 41 points or whatever. You know, Diego Pavia is not sitting there just trying to run out the clock when they're winning 12-6. So they have what works and what is necessary in college football. And Holst, I'll tell you what, you mentioned Penn State. If you put him in there for Drew Aller, I think they're still obviously going to be taken seriously as a national champion contender because they're up that high in the rankings. Holstein's better than Aller.
You think?
Absolutely. What have you seen from Drew Aller?
Well, I mean, all the NFL scouts think he's going to be.
How about this question?
Wonderful.
If Pitt hypothetically did play Penn State, let's just dream a little bit here and say they're going to meet in a.
Pitt would have the quarterback advantage.
Okay, who would win the game?
Penn State. Better talent up and down. But
no, you don't want to ask me this.
I'm
going to say Pitt, but Penn State would be favored by 8.
I would give Pitt an actual puncher's chance because I think they have the better quarterback there.
Penn State would be favored
and the better offensive
7, 8, 9.
Cade Bell would give them a leg up too.
You have a chance in any game with that offense.
Yeah.
Pitt has a chance with anyone with that offense.
Pitt going in there and beating Penn State at Penn State would sustain my life force for decades.
First of all, they got to play the game. They got to play the game.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. That would be something very nice later in the year. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Penguins who get underway this week. That's next. All right, it's hockey season. Wednesday night, opening game. It's the Rangers and the Penguins at PPG Paints Arena. And the Penguins, 2 years in a row without the playoffs, cost them money. Chris, I want to ask you about, what needs to change. Clearly, the power play, if it had been only, 30, half decent. It was 15%. If it's 21%, they probably get in. Aside from that, what other things have to change for the Penguins to get into the playoffs?
I think you need from Mike Sullivan a roll of the dice, and that means playing younger players. I mean, he burst on the scene, fired Mike Johnston, and then here this guy takes you to a couple. How did he do that? He had a bunch of AHL guys. He said, bring these guys up. I trust them. I've coached them. He needs to start having that kind of trust in guys he hasn't been coaching in the minor leagues. They have to get younger. I mean, they absolutely have to get younger and a little bit faster. They still their luxury is their high-end guys are still pretty skilled if they stay healthy. You've got to just add in depth there that gives teams problems. I think they're pretty easy to play against when Crosby's line isn't out there and Malkin's line's not out there. They have to become tougher to play against. That means get younger, get faster.
Yeah, faster is the key. Obviously, they have to improve on the power players. No question about it. 15% is unacceptable.
Yeah, how about Erik Karlsson actually plays, competently for once?
Yeah, Erik Karlsson, Letang on the power play. Hopefully, it's a little bit better. New coach. We'll see. For me, it's goaltending. Tristan Jarry, we got to see the good version of Tristan Jarry, not the bad version.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. I think their defensemen, they need to change their style a little bit too. Understand when to pinch, when not to pinch. They've been guilty of too many of those kinds of things, and when you do it, you end up with problems there, and also 3-on-3. We never talk about 3-on-3. You think it's just just throw them out there and skate.
There's no game planning that they do, and I think that is one of those devil in the details things. We all kind of treat it as a gimmick. They can't.
Yeah.
You've got to actually try to put something out there that looks strategic, and they get beat by lesser talented teams and get that point taken from them
Those
too
are
often.
critical points, Rich.
You would think that the 3-on-3 and the power play would be to the Penguins' advantage, and it hasn't.
They should
been,
be lethal.
I totally do not understand that.
Yeah, whatever. That's got to change. It starts on Wednesday night. We'll see, but they need to get back into the playoffs. Meantime, if you're considering an electric vehicle, but you're worried about the cost of a home charger, don't worry about it. Number one Cochran Kia is here to help. When you buy or lease a new EV this October, you'll get $1,500 credit toward your charger purchase and installation. Plus, their partner Treehouse can handle all the permitting and installation. This offer is available only at number one Cochran Kia, so mention this ad when you buy. Shop EVS now, cochrankia.com, and we'll be right back. All right, if you're watching us, you may have missed this, but Dallas just took the lead 13-10 in the fourth quarter. We'll talk more about this coming up. You'll have Steelers Monday tomorrow on KDKA. We'll have that. Chris, I know you have a lot to talk about on the PM.
I'm preparing for overtime.
No.
We're out of time. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next Sunday night for another edition of The Showdown. Have a good week.